Each year, we ask a member of the staff to reflect on some of their thoughts about this middle school class and middle school in general. This year, it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Patrick Gallo.
Good morning, everyone. You know, Mr. Wynn actually took a lot of my speech, so I'm going to have to wing some of this here. My name, if you don't already know, is Mr. Gallo. To many of the students here at East Chester Middle School, I'm kind of a mystery man. I often get asked, Mr. Gallo, what do you teach? It's fun to watch them try to use my physical attributes to figure out what it is that I teach. When I first started, kids used to ask me if I was a gym teacher. But after years of eating cafeteria food, I no longer get that question. A 6th grade student once asked me if I was a chorus teacher. She said, "I always hear you singing." One kid said, well, he can't be a math teacher because math isn't that funny. Maybe he teaches the same thing as Miss Bernaducci. They're both so loud. A few weeks ago, Mr. Wynn asked me to speak here today. I can't imagine what was going through his mind when he made this decision, but we all know the man is under a lot of pressure. It's not easy running a middle school, and no one will argue that he has done a tremendous job. But if I could offer a piece of advice to Mr. Wynn, life is about balance. And when you put too much time into one part of life, another part often suffers. And I'm sure I wasn't the only one that was a little disappointed in this year's batch of Linzer tarts. For some reason, the thought of giving Mr. Gallo a microphone has made many staff members feel very uneasy. If you look around the room right now, you can see that look. Look at the administrators behind me. Pure horror. It's actually more anxiety. What is Mr. Gallo going to say? Will he embarrass me? Well, this year, the 8th grade was introduced to a device that many say can help ease those feelings of anxiety. So I brought a few of them with me to share with our anxious administrators. I'm going to ask Ms. Fiore to hand them out for me. Ms. Fiore, if you wouldn't mind.
I know they are.
One of my students showed me how to do this. I mean, you're all beginners, so you're probably gonna have to use 2 hands. But you can flick, right? Sam Baglio showed this to me, right, Sam? It's all a flick. He's the master of it. Okay, so let's start. Let me start here by answering a question that has troubled 8th graders for centuries. Why do we need to know this stuff? I get asked that question every year. Why do we need to know about rocks? Mr. Chertok would tell you not to take it for granted. Ms. Hugic would tell you that science rocks. But seriously, I can't tell you how often this topic comes up in my own life. Just the other day, my son came running up to me in the house and asked me what kind of rock he had found in the garden. So of course I pulled out a glass plate, a penny, a porcelain tile, a magnet, and my earth science reference table. I examined the specimen for a minute and then turned to him and said, "Why, that is mica schist." "Ew, that's gross," he replied. "You mean I found poop?" Why do we need to know math? Math is the only subject that counts. According to a recent study, 3 out of every 2 students have difficulty with math.
That took a minute.
My wife is terrible at math. The other day, she was helping my daughter with her homework. I heard her try to make 7 an even number by dropping the S. All right, so here you guys are, middle school class of 2017, high school class of 2021. You guys will be remembered as Mr. Wynn's last group of 8th graders. You navigated the halls as tiny 6th graders, filled Mr. McGee's fish tank with crayfish, took on Boston in the 7th grade and landed in the 8th grade this past September, ready to rule the school. But whether you were red or blue, your experiences in the 8th grade were similar. Your science teachers both own stock in Clorox wipe and both own stocks in Clorox wipe and hand sanitizer. They make clouds in a bottle and spend their time counting words in news articles. Your math teachers were mirror images of each other. They dress the same, they teach the same, and they drink the same flavor Starbucks iced tea. They even wear the same jean jacket, like they're part of some kind of math biker gang. I'm convinced they even text in binary code. You know, we used to Moodle here. That was a big thing. If you were a Moodler, you were cutting edge. But your ELA teachers bought us Google. So now we Google. We use Google Docs, Google Classroom. Some of my students even Googled Google, which is very dangerous. Mr. Weiss loves Google. He can't go 3 minutes without saying the word Google. Whereas your math teachers drink Starbucks, your ELA teachers drink Dunkin' Donuts. Close your eyes and try to picture Mr. Weiss or Miss Kearns without Dunkin' Donuts in their hands. It's impossible. To many of you, history was a mystery. And this year you studied over 100 years of American history. Think about just how fortunate you were to have had 2 teachers old enough to have personally experienced everything you studied. From the transcontinental to Sputnik, these guys have seen it all. And what about guidance? Who hasn't walked in there and had to step over about 50 6th graders crawling around playing Pokemon during lunch? Or sat in Miss Fiore's office and stared at her Lego collection? And then there's the mystery of Miss DeMarco's tan. How is it she gets darker in the winter? And let's not forget about Mr. Elder's holiday sweater.
What is it?
Or what about Taco Tuesday? And Taco Wednesday and Taco Thursday? Why is it always Taco Day in the cafeteria? Today marks a bittersweet moment in your lives. Whether you want to admit it or not, sure, you're excited for summer, you're excited to be high schoolers, but your time here in the middle school is not something you will soon forget. No doubt the last 3 years have been filled with ups and downs. Most people look back at their middle school days as the most difficult time in their childhood. The middle of the race is always the toughest part. You aren't fresh from the start, and you can't quite see the finish line yet. As you move forward, take what you've learned here, your experiences, your successes, and your failures, and use them to guide you to the finish line. So what do I teach? Well, I always find that question very difficult to answer, because I don't think you can simply define a teacher by the grade or the subject they teach. Teaching is more than standing in front of a classroom and delivering information. Every day presents a new challenge, a different obstacle, or an opportunity to make a difference in a child's life. Our mission statement in the middle school says that we aim to guide students effectively towards becoming responsible, competent, and respectful young adults with a sense of enthusiasm and purpose. Enthusiasm and purpose. I love that line. So why do I sing in the hallways? Why am I so loud? Why do I laugh with my students? Because if I'm not enthusiastic about being here, why should they be? I leave you with a quote. Many of my students know my favorite president, and I'm going to leave you a quote from the great Harry S. Truman. If you can't convince them, confuse them. Good luck in the high school. We wish you well.